Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 2 o'clock talk, Securing the Network. What about the data? It'll be presented by Jack Hatwick here, a man of many talents, and I'm not exaggerating. He once took himself on in a staring contest and won. So he's going to tell you a little bit more about himself and some cool network stuff. Over to you.
Actually, not cool network stuff. We're going to be talking about data. Networks is actually why we're here, to talk about this whole idea of networks, the whole idea of the network-centric way in which we secure our environments and our data. Usually people think about IPSs, firewalls, maybe WAFs if the budget will permit. Beyond that, a lot of people don't think outside of that. They think firewall is going to take care of it. Maybe I'm patching some of my stuff. Maybe I'm doing some vulnerability management. But after that, that's what we're doing. Getting people outside of that is what we're trying to do today. We're going to talk about focusing on the data. But first of all, who am I? Anybody get the Les Miserables reference? Okay, no? All right. My name is Jack Hatwick, and I am also Oddjob on Twitter, 0DDJ0BB. If you want to follow me. I'm a blue teamer with offensive tendencies, so I like to say. My experience is not elite, but I'm not a noob either. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of things that I still don't know, things that I'm still learning. There's probably people in here in this room who are going to say, yeah, I already know some of this stuff. Maybe a couple things make you go, nice, but I'm sure there's many things we can all share with each other in conversation. And of course, Noob Squad over there, all right. Well, perk up your ears. You might learn a few things then. I hope it'll be valuable to you. And also, I am superbly sexable. I cannot believe they actually put that in the program. That was awesome. I did that when I did the CFP, and it ended up on the program. Fantastic that they did that. So I like to post an agenda before I just start talking on things. It keeps me on cue. It also keeps you in mind of he should be giving me these things. So we're going to discuss the goal of both information security and also the threat actors. We're also going to be discussing data in general. Also, we're going to discuss non-technical considerations to secure with data, it's known as business operations, and also suggest features to look for when you actually look at technologies to secure your data. So, who's ever seen this headline? No, you haven't. Exactly. Didn't see a single hand go up because no one ever saw a headline on the front of the New York Times or the USA Today or Gizmodo or anything like that. You never saw a company firewall bypassed and hack. Maybe somewhere out there where they're actually describing the hack or the exploit or the thing that was going on. Maybe they say firewall was bypassed or this control was bypassed. But generally nobody, the CIOs, the CEO, the COO, they don't care about that. That's not the thing they saw in the newspaper. That is the thing they saw in the newspaper. And very recently, this is something we saw in the newspapers. We woke up a couple days ago to this. So I just created my slides this morning. So I was able to put this in here. Ransomware hits hospital and closes temporarily. I believe I even saw an entire hospital actually had to close. That's amazing that ransomware was able to do that. But again, ransomware is not a network attack. Ransomware, it surfs the network sometimes to get to another device, but ransomware is a data attack. It attacks the data. It's wanting to get at that data. So what's the goal? The goal wasn't the firewall, because the firewall isn't worth anything. The data was worth something. You're going to see a lot of Star Trek pictures. So we see that data is actually worth something. Firewalls aren't. When you get a firewall, it is immediately entered into accounting as a cost. It's an asset for a little bit. It's a CapEx, right? And then it amortizes out. But it was a cost. That data is going to exist there for a long time. And it's going to have value. Why? Because you keep using it. When's the last time you thought, why is Facebook free? Facebook's not free. You are the value of Facebook. The more you're on Facebook, the more you're on Twitter, the more data they're collecting. The more data they're collecting, they're correlating that, they're doing various things to see in various market segments. They sell those types of correlations and things to their partners, also known as advertisers, for the money. Your data is worth something to somebody. Facebook's data is worth something to somebody. Joann's, the arts and crafts store, the sewing store, their data is worth something to somebody. Their data is valuable. If they took their data away, as in ransomware, their operations stop. Revenue stops. That's value. So the data is worth something. The firewalls are not. Resources can also be worth something, right? We can have an entire data center with plenty of servers in there with ridiculous processors that can do amazing things. So that could be worth something to somebody. Somebody could want to liberate those resources for their own malicious or other purposes. So that's worth something, but we're going to be talking about data for this. But data, it's very important to understand, is not, as far as IT, I'm going to assume we're all IT or security and we're on the technical side of things here. It's not our asset as far as IT goes. It's not a server log. That's our asset. It's an institutional asset. And so we have to talk about data as an institutional asset, not an IT asset. Companies don't generally deal with your firewall. When does a company actually deal with your firewall? Actually, they don't even know they're dealing with your firewall. All they know is, I can't get to X because my network path there is being blocked by that. And they're calling you up, they're putting a ticket in and saying, hey, I can't get in, I think your firewall, blah, blah, blah. Because, of course, they're IT, right? The accountant's IT. That's the only time anybody ever notices the firewall, when it's not working. But what are they trying to get to? They don't care about your firewall. They want to get to the data. They want to get to their job. They want to do their work. Your firewall is not their work. However, we know that all levels of the company come in contact with data on a daily basis, whether it's gathering, storing, it's editing, it's processing, it's transmitting, it's accessing, and yes, even destroying data. Sometimes you need to destroy data, and you need to do that properly. And many of those may not even involve technology. Have you ever seen, especially at colleges, I used to work in higher ed, ever notice in some colleges or in some other institutions where someone will write down a customer or someone else's username, password, social security number, some other PII, and pass that via sticky note to someone else? Track that via IT. What kind of process do you have in place for that, right? So this is data, but that is data. It's information. You can't track it right now because it's on paper. But that was data. They gathered it that way. So some of those processes aren't even technology. They're paper. They're word of mouth. Some data is irreplaceable. Like intellectual property, trade secrets. God forbid if Colonel Sanders' recipe ever gets out, right? I mean, it'd be good for me because I can cook me some KFC whenever I want, but Colonel Sanders ain't going to be able to get his KFC in a good enough profit margin anymore because everyone's going to have it. Everyone's going to know it. I don't know if KFC's recipe is well known or not. But if you've got a trade secret, if Cummins has a trade secret for their new engine, they've got research and design, hours and assets and expenditures pulled into this brand new engine that we're going to build and release next month. And sure enough, the next week, they see a big old advertisement for an engine that does the exact same thing, is the exact same design. And you go, how'd that happen? You can't get that back. You cannot get that back, and you cannot replace the cost that you already spent in getting that data and creating that data. So that's data. So that data is obviously valuable because it's unique to the organization. If others had it, you're no longer having the competitive advantage or differentiation. Some data, and a lot of the data that we think about, is not even about your organization. Facebook's data, a lot of it's not even about them. It's about you. It's about their customers. It's about their partners. It's about their patients. It's about their employees. That's the type of data we're also trying to protect, isn't it? So once this information is taken, it cannot be untaken. OPM, when that got hit, that data cannot be untaken. Your fingerprints, if you were in the OPM database breach, your fingerprints cannot be untaken from that. You can't go back and not get your fingerprints. They have it. That's scary, and that scares a lot of people who are in that, and they understand what's going on. That's a very scary thing. Someone has your fingerprints and you don't know who it is. Vehicles, equipment, furniture are all assets we can replace. Maybe not that exact piece of furniture, but I didn't care that I had that exact piece of furniture, just as long as it wasn't Aunt Ethel's, because no one can replace Aunt Ethel's couch. But we can find a couch exactly like it and put it back in. It may not have the love and the shape of our Aunt Ethel in it anymore, but it certainly is the same couch. Organizations tend to only value their data after a breach. Now, we understand that very much. People only start worrying about security when they get breached. Oh, wow, how much are we spending on security? Well, we need to lower that. All of a sudden, a breach happens. Hey, how much money does security need? How much money do you need? Can I give you $1 million right now and you do something with it that, takes care of some headlines? PR wants to know. That's the type of thing we see after a breach. But data has a value, and if you can get your organization to understand that their data has a value on it, and that once it's lost, it now represents a cost to the organization, I think you can go far in taking care of some of these things that we've been wanting to take care of. Because when they finally pay for the data, it becomes a cost rather than a value. And this is generally what risk managers care about, but rarely does someone actually consider the value of that data. So if you truly protect the data, if you truly value the data, you want to protect the data. You don't want to protect just the network. If you knew your bank, for instance, was as an operation required the bank tellers to take cash to their homes and count it and bring it back and hope that everything's going to be okay, that that's not going to be counterfeited, that a couple Hondos aren't going to be lifted or rolled up and used for illegal purposes. I'll let you decide what those are. Why then do we not view unencrypted laptops, USB drives, and shadow cloud as the exact same thing? Someone is taking my cash from the bank that I'm supposed to be securing, taking it home and counting it, doing whatever work they're supposed to be doing, bringing it back the next day, and man, we hope to God it comes back okay. We hope it comes back okay. I mean, how many times have you seen that in the headline or it's part of a story? Oh yeah, it was unencrypted laptop stolen. Had data on it. There's a nice little Twitter feed actually that deals with tabletop exercises. I think it's called Bad Things Daily. Yeah, love it. And one of those is unencrypted laptop with like a whole database of stuff was stolen. What do you do? That's a great thing to go through. And a lot of that has to do with data that just walks away from your organization. So where is the data? Well, here's your trusty old network, right? That looks like we can control a lot of things in there. But then we start getting these guys in place. And now data starts kind of walking off-prem. We get this guy, and that's definitely off-prem. We get IoT or some of these other things that are happening at people's homes. We don't know what's going on, but people bring those things home, and IoT may be involved in some things. And we also, Samsung smart TVs might start listening to your sensitive data. Who knows what's going on there? There's a threat model. And then we also see BYOD. That's the classic. So where's your data? The network's no longer a place where the data solely resides. And that hasn't been the case for quite a long time, but we still have to remind ourselves this. Laptops, BYOD, tablets, USB, cloud. Can anybody ever think of another place? Off the top of your head, can anybody think of another place I haven't mentioned there? That covers a lot of them. Okay. Many of the new places, I say new in parentheses, they're not controlled by a firewall. They won't be seen by a firewall. They never traverse a firewall. So you have a wonderful policy crafted in place, but it's not doing anything. And even if it does control network access to a resource for a thing, it doesn't necessarily control who as an identity has access to that resource, or has access to that data, or what kinds of data once they're in that resource that they're allowed to grab at. When the data's on-prem, they're hardly the best defense against attacks and breaches. Malware gets through firewall standpoints because why? The users still need to browse, check email, download files, and yeah, a lot of times they need to stick USB drives in their computers that they found in the parking lot that wasn't distributed by me. at all. No, I wouldn't do that. All of these bypass your IPS and firewalls. Data that is in the cloud can be accessed seemingly from anywhere. Yes, there's security groups you can put in place, but they're designed to be accessed from anywhere and be used anywhere. So you're not going to be able to stop those types of attacks with firewalls and SIEMs. Where your data is also not an IT question, it's an institutional question. So the business needs to gather, store, and handle data. That's not the IT department. The IT department cannot query what is in a filing cabinet, if you still have those. A lot of places probably do. You can't say, oh, let me just run a grep on a filing cabinet over here. Can't do that. So what do we need to do? We need to be intimate with our organizations. We have to get intimate with our business operation heads and figure out the who, what, where, when, why, and how, the data for the organization. And a lot of times we call this data discovery and classification. Have lunch with people. Go over to your VP of operations, your COO. Go down to the functional users. Say, hey, I'm going to shadow you for a day or a half day. And at lunch, I want to go to lunch with you and ask, hey, I saw you opening that program. What was that program? I have never seen that before. How does it work? Take these notes. You saw them write something down on a sticky note. That looked like it was data that shouldn't be just written down. What's the problem with that process? Let's figure out a different process for that. Let's change the way work looks for them. So who needs access to this data? I want access to that data. That's an awesome data. So who should have access to this data? The firewalls are not going to be able to tell you, so stop looking through your firewall logs to figure out who needs access to data. They might be able to tell you who is attempting to access the network for that data, but it's not going to tell you who needs access to what particular directories, files, schemas, tables, columns, fields. And it's not the end-all be-all, as the firewalls aren't always in a position, again, to determine who is accessing data. You still haven't managed to get access to the data, just the resources. We are going to have to ask the organization. Also, again, consider that microsegmentation on the network basis. Microsegmentation isn't even on the network radar for a lot of people. Is anybody doing microsegmentation in their network? No. It's not on the radar for a lot of people to make sure that this device can't talk to even devices within its broadcast domain and be able to detect what type of conversations are going on. So that's even a thing. That's how lateral movement's easy to get around, as long as you stick around in a broadcast domain. So be careful what you put next to each other in the same neighborhood, right? So we have to ask the business operations. They're the ones creating it. They're the ones using it. They're the ones handling the data. They know about how that data actually works. From there, now that we understand how the business operations are working, we can either change some of those business operations, or we can even start identifying role-based access requirements. We can say, okay, so-and-so needs access to this, this, this. We need to reorganize our data this way so that the role-based access can actually work. You might have to organize your data a little differently. And here's a little pro tip, or at least a little pro opinion. Shift your DLP priorities from network DLP to endpoint. Of course, that depends on which applies more to you. And this 80% number is more of a number based on my experience and understanding and looking at various networks and customers I've been in. 80% of your DLP concerns are going to be happening on the endpoint. And even if not, do you have SSL access? Do you have SSL visibility into those network streams going out in your network? How many people are doing SSL man in the middle? One person. Congratulations to you. I wish I had. Oh, another person. Yes. Expensive stuff. Yes, very expensive. And so a lot of times what I'll recommend with people is say, hey, start on your endpoints first, because that's where you're going to be able to take care of most of your data handling. That's where you're going to be able to take care of being able to see who's sending what types of data out beyond just that. So just something to keep in mind. So the first thing we want to do before we start saying, well, let's get these technologies, let's get DLP. Oddjob said endpoint DLP is where we need to go. No, let's first look at the business operations. Is there something we can improve there? Is there something we can do better? So let's take care of our business ops before tech. Always look at ways you can simplify, consolidate the amount of methods data is actually handled. If you have 20 different methods to gather the same data, consolidate that down to a couple maybe. Maybe you have a main one, but then in case it's not convenient for the customer, let's get the edge case out there as well and say, okay, we also accept it this way. Change the way work looks. Wolf's right here in the middle of this speaking hall here. And one thing I've always been impressed by what he says is, when you make security changes in the organization about culture, that's not going to get your work done. When you change what the business does as far as how they gather these business requirements, as they gather this data, when you change the way work looks, when you change workflows and say this is how your work looks, and its security is built into that, not as some weird snake way of doing something, work is going to get done. When security is just culture, oh, don't click on that thing, that's a culture, don't click it. But I have to click it because it said invoice.pdf. And I'm an accountant. Accounts receivable or accounts payable, whichever that is. So I have to take it. But if my work no longer looks like that, I go, funny, that's not how I do my job. And then, you start looking through and verifying, is that even who that is? Because it throws you off. So change the way work looks before you start changing everyone's technology and business. On that front. So try to change the way work looks like. Make quality business, make it a point of quality. I saw a nice presentation by someone from Anthem in the application security department. And he actually presents application security as, do quality applications expose data? No. But that's a security concern. Yeah, but that's a quality concern. So let's make sure our business applications, as well as our technologies, have quality built into them and present it that way. Once operation changes are agreed upon, let's look at technologically supporting those goals. Let's technologically audit a lot of those things, because a lot of the things that we're going to be changing in business operations are going to need to be audited. And it's hard to do that in person. So we might have to have technologies to do just that. And once your policy is designed for that, you need to start first, when you start looking at technology, start looking where the data is and securing that, instead of saying, well, we're going to start on the network, and no, that's way out. That's way out from the data. Start from where the data is and say, how am I going to secure access within this database? How am I going to secure access within these file servers? How am I going to secure access within the ERP? How am I going to start then securing access on the systems those are on? How am I going to secure access on the endpoints that are being used to access those services, or the terminal servers that are accessing those services? Then you can start saying, okay, firewall. I got your basic rules in place, but what else might we be able to do? Here we go. So what is a control? Before we move on to the technology, what is a control? A control has to follow these 3 rules. It has to be managed, operationalized, and audited. I like to think of being managed as, why don't you ever look at me? Operationalized is, why don't you do anything about me? Audited is, do you even care what happens to me, or if I'm even doing my job? So managed, if you can't tell me if your entire organization is covered on their endpoint, you're not managing your endpoint. On operationalization, if it's not kicking tickets out to you or kicking out emails to you that match workflows for you to remediate or look into something for investigation, you don't have a security control, you have a security uncontrol. If it's audited, are you sure it's even working right? Have you tested those use cases you've put in there that this should be protecting? Is it efficable or efficacious, I think I put in there? Does it work? Who's been accessing it? Who's been making changes to this thing? Can I audit that? A lot of compliance cares about that, but that's just 1/3 of it. So let's be taking a look at those things as we these non-network technologies we're going to take a look at. And do as much as you can with what you have already. That's very important. If you have something already in place, if you have things in place already that you can use, there's no sense in going out and buying hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment or tools when you have the things already in place. Even if it requires a little scripting, a little bit of a little finesse to get some of these logs working right. If you can get those things working right, then let's go ahead and use those. Data classification solutions. I'm not going to read every small little thing on here, but sometimes you're going to see that as part of DLP solutions, and there's certain things that should be allowed on here that should be able to do. It should be you should be able to create classification without having to just do regexes, because regexes introduce another problem into the whole equation. But you should be able to actually put in metadata into a file to say, hey, this is this type of data. Or I see that this is this type of data going to this database connection. On the endpoint DLP side of things, we should be able to recognize what a cloud app is. We should be able to see, oh, that's a Dropbox communication. Oh, they have Dropbox installed on their machine. Oh, this is a web browsing connection to Google Drive or whatever. What's going on there? I should be able to recognize those types of transfers. I should also be able, if I have terminal servers or Citrix, how many people have Citrix in here? Okay, no, it's not always in there, but a lot of people have Citrix in their environment. And so you need to be able to have endpoint DLP controls on that'll work with that. What about database? There's a lot of database controls out there that will actually look for account behavior. So if someone's doing things that they've never done before on an account, kick out an alert to somebody, hey, so-and-so's account is going crazy across all the tables. There's a lot of access failures. That's weird. What's going on? Maybe an account compromise. We can lock down access by users on tables or even fields that way too. Maybe the system doesn't come pre-built with that granularity. There's a lot of security tools on databases that can actually provide that kind of stuff. Mobile management is not to be confused with mobile threat prevention. So there's some overlap there, but when you get mobile management, you should be able to have containerized data controls. Whereas if you have a container that has all of your corporate data, that has a VPN, and I can access my files and edit them and everything like that, but I can't copy and paste out of there. The clipboard is not allowed. If I try to take it over to my Dropbox account, you can't paste. It's not going to happen. The data did not go that way because that container did not allow that action. The email, it stays there. You can't forward it to somebody else. You can't just forward it off to yourself. You can't copy that email, move it. You can't do that. It stays within the container. When you leave, we're going to blow up that container, right? So we got to take a look at those things. And you should also have app control. We should look at limiting email and the corporate data transfers inside that container as well. So these are all things to look at, but don't forget device, file, and drive encryption. Talked about that before with the bank. And don't forget the Oxford comma. Yes! Thank you. Don't forget because let me tell you what, device, file, and drive encryption are different than device, file, and drive encryption. Security as a service, CASB. Anybody heard of CASB? Cloud Access Security Brokerage? Of course Wolf has. So just a very quick, I'm going to make these slides available, but a very quick, the cloud-based solutions, they're cloud-based solutions. They're designed to look at threats and control how data is transmitted. Sometimes CASB or even security as a service providers will let you on-prem GRE tunnel all of your traffic to them. So that as you're going up to other various cloud places, they're going to go ahead and inspect that traffic and see what's going on. They're going to see, is so-and-so allowed to do this? They're also going to be taking in your Active Directory or LDAP and seeing who these might be tied to. Some of the cloud access security brokerages will have forward and reverse proxies that you can put on the inside of your network, along with endpoint devices you can put on mobile and also your laptops that are running around out there, so that if anything's going to go to these certain places, they make a pit stop to your proxy and that then controls what access they're allowed to put up there. Oh, this person's trying to go to Dropbox. We don't have a Dropbox, but we do have a Box account on the corporate side. So we're going to just shift them over to that. Oh, they're losing their personal Box account. We're just going to shift them over to their enterprise Box account. Make sure that that's being used, because that type of data that they're using is corporate data. We want to make sure that it's taken care of. Or maybe we want to go ahead and let them do that. But you know what? We're going to encrypt it and make sure that if that ever gets hit, it's encrypted again, not just with Dropbox or Box. It's going to be file level encrypted. So look for those types of things when you look at security as a service, CASB. That's fairly new technology too. This is within the past maybe 4 years, 5 years maybe, some of the stuff, and it's enriched with every single year. There's always changes, so be looking for those types of things. I'm not giving you vendors, by the way, even though I do work for a security VAR. I haven't even mentioned that. If you do want to know about stuff like that, you can still talk to me. We can talk vendors, but I'm not here to talk about vendors. I'm just talking about here are some controls you can put in place, some places you've maybe never thought of going before. So let's wrap up. Tried not to make this too long. Data, Mr. Data, is not an institutional asset, or is an institutional asset, it's not an IT asset. So we have to go to the institution to figure out what they're doing with their own data. Network technology is usually not in a position and usually doesn't have the features to secure data. Certain next-gen firewalls will say, oh, we have DLP. No, you have some DLP features I can turn on the firewall. That's all fine and dandy, but your firewall isn't at my endpoint. Oh, we have an endpoint module. Okay, now you may be talking. Well, let me tell you what, once your single platform goes down, if we want to start collapsing everything down to a single platform, what happens when that one platform goes down? Yeah, sure, we have several different solutions, but we don't have layers. We have columns. And once I knock down those columns, the whole thing comes down. If I knock down the thing that's holding up the columns, the whole thing comes down. So we got to watch out. We got to make sure we're layering that technology. We're not just putting it in place in parallel. Or series, I forget however that might work. Series would probably be the best way to say it. Since data is institutional, security must be built into the business operations first. We have to think, what's the business wanting to accomplish? What is the business wanting to do? If you're in martial arts and you do sword martial arts, you might hear the phrase, blade before face, blade before body. Move the sword before you move your body. Not only is that safety, but safety for yourself to make sure that you're not going to get cut, but also safety for yourself to make sure that your opponent's not going to cut you while you're trying to move back. Because if you move your sword up and try to move back, you have an opening. But if you move back first and then move up, that's different. You're protecting yourself. So keep that in mind. Beyond basic perimeter security, attention has to be immediately given to data security rather than network security. So yeah, we've got our lovely perimeter in. We've got all these very basic, foundational level security tools in place. Fantastic, that's great. We're not wanting to get rid of those. Let's immediately start going to the data. Many technologies exist to effect data security measures and controls. And I think I even said that wrong. Whatever. So the wrap up. This isn't our last data picture either. You still need that security, and this talk is merely just to explore security beyond the perimeter. Any questions? Any comments? Any discussion items? Because we still have about, I think, 5 minutes left. Has anybody seen some of this in their environment? I see someone in the back. What have you seen in your environment? You don't have to tell us who your environment is. Yeah, DLP. It sucks. It does. It's something someone wants right now, isn't it? It's an investment. It's money. I just have to give you money and you give me DLP. Yes, it's also very hard to find. Yes. 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 And not only that, they don't always understand your business operations and how those work, right? And that's a big part of it too. Again, this isn't going to be, DLP is not something you're going to buy probably from one vendor. It's a program. It is an ecosystem of controls. And that's not necessarily just, I have this technology. It's how do I, at various places, put in place these controls. And how many people document stuff after they've done it? 1 person, 2 person, 3 person, 4 person. Wow. That's quite a bit, and that's amazing. Document your stuff after you've done it. And as you're going along all of these steps that we've discussed here, document everything. Because you're going to help yourself out in the future. You're going to help everyone else out in the future. So document those things as well. Has anybody else seen some of the stuff we've talked about today? Wolf.
I have something interesting for you.
All right.
DLP on the endpoint, right?
Yeah.
Typically, there's a million different ways that you can implement it. We
Yep.
agree the technology sucks.
Yep.
And you give it to the IT guy that says, yeah, that's suspicious, no, that's not. Maybe this is okay. I classify that, we as an organization who worked with who changed the paradigm a little bit, and I really like what they did. There was 4 levels. It's like acceptable business process, broken business process,
Yeah, escalate to IT.
And they gave that console, that responsibility to the business units themselves.
Got you. There you go.
And then the business units themselves have visibility into what their people are doing. We start to see interesting things emerging wherein the department heads were recognizing these broken processes and using DLP like a canary in the coal mine to find inefficiencies within their organization.
Right. And again, now you're not only getting technology to not be so much of a cost, but now it's providing a value to the business. Because the better you can streamline your processes and be better and have better quality in those things, it's probably going to be more manageable. It's going to be more secure, hopefully, because that should be a part of quality. And like you said, it's not going to be broken. You can actually use the things.
And then the institution owns the risk.
Yes.
Also, IT trying to make that decision.
Yes. IT does not own the risk on anything unless, of course, something they put in place caused that. The business owns the risk. We're there to advise on how to remediate and manage that risk. So keep that in mind, too. All right. I think that's probably about all the time I have, unless, is anybody keeping track of my time? What time is it? 3:36. Okay. Yeah. A couple more questions, comments on anything they're seeing in their environments? No. The endpoint DLP piece, like you said, there's a lot of crap out there. And there's a lot of things out there that people say, oh, it does this, oh, it does this, it does this, and it doesn't work so well. And as I always say, even if sometimes you can't get the best protection, get the best visibility at the very least. Get the best visibility so you can understand what's actually going on in your environment. Treat your SIM, again, as you're looking at logs and things, treat your SIM not just as a log dump, where you just dump all your logs. Actually make it worth something. Actually put workflows in that. Actually put something that's operational. Make all of these products also orchestrate themselves. To where if one thing if an endpoint thing catches something, it kicks off something to the firewall, or it kicks off something else. It kicks off a ticket. It kicks off other things, other actions to other controls you have in place, so that it can remediate. It can react to something that it saw, or inform somebody, hey, you need to further investigate this. So. I hope this was valuable to everybody, and I think I was told once I don't think you're going to be able to fit all that in 50 minutes, but I think I did it, and I hope I didn't go too quick for everybody. I'm going to make these slides available for everybody, and I'll definitely tweet it out, so keep an eye on 0DDJ0BB if you want the rest of these slides. It'll include the notes as well. And as the second picture indicates, let's drink about it. Let's talk about it. And let's keep these conversations going. You're going to know more things than I do because you've seen other things, and I may know some things you've never seen before. So that's why we have to keep these conversations going. So let's not stop here. Let's keep going on this. Thank you, guys.